Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from multi-lineage magical academy infiltration, weaponized sleeping curse loops, and the early literacy frameworks of royal fairy tale boarding schools, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of macro-level civilizational engineering, weaponized societal logic loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an analytical chronicler running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of an elite second-tier prose construction facility, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, hard history-governed literary matrix with On Writing and World-Building, Volume 2, the exceptional, pulse-pounding critical analysis follow-up masterpiece engineered by the absolute, undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking world architecture, double-blind lore traps, and high-velocity structural mechanics, Timothy Hickson, popularly designated across public streaming networks as Hello Future Me. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where an aspiring primary creator asset running an unyielding structural generation loop, a calculating, manipulative shadow network of cliched storytelling tropes running an elite proximity tracking and narrative collapse routine, and an absolute defense against an encroaching, inconsistent world-building containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn creative manuals, where an endangered, hyper-observant speculative protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged interstellar planet-building metrics, corrupt timeline-shifting mechanics, and a deadly ring of active personal pacing frame-ups, while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised epic fantasy or sci-fi ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated structural progression boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset, weaponizing institutional lazy writing mechanics, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, highly structured breakdown of advanced magic, evolution, complex cyberpunk dystopias, the sociological impact of plagues, and the lethal geopolitical mechanics of world maps, diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Hickson completely dominates the high-precision literary jeopardy meets suffocating narrative sabotage puzzles dynamic, capturing the hard-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating studio paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by franchise vargs like Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, Orson Scott Card, and J.R.R. Tolkien, while treating realistic physical geography layouts, complex structural alignment arcs, and protective high-density world generation grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse creator asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of loose narrative logic, absolute exposition liquidation logs, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a critical audience's localized tracking database. Behind our protagonist's rigorous thematic footprints, defensive conversational shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried world histories, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Their collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight upon opening the text's sacred core chapters, their entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from an encroaching internal sabotage network, parsing complex behavioral shifts in their daily character interaction loops, and shielding their vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. After entering the secondary world-building modules, our primary asset registers a total security breach when the guide initializes an irregular onboarding sequence, forcing the creator into a series of highly uncomfortable calculation-heavy profiling matrices, analyzing the functional tradecraft of fallen empires, complex dystopias, and language evolution. Behind the manual's pristine instructional civilian facade and elite behavioral mapping style lies an intricate matrix of deep structural analysis and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial investigation phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across a ticking clock timeline, the unauthorized discovery of hard magic evolution thresholds and precise plague containment metrics reveals that her standard world-building shortcut was an explicitly engineered trap. The standard boundaries of routine lazy fantasy writing and peaceful civilian compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. She is thrust directly into an active, invisible war behind closed studio doors, where a highly manipulative adversarial asset launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her survival data stream and execute her complete systemic erasure. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the large world-building whiteboards, dark lore archive vaults, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. Armed with tactical breakdowns regarding the realistic sociological evolution of post-apocalyptic societies and the precise pacing of systemic exposition, the threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep plot manipulation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting via plot armor shortcuts, and persistent dominance to shatter her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of historical dystopias, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard architectural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the Predator Network's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Timothy Hickson reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial creative ambush or managing an invasive plot disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychological supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their building survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient protagonist must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a writing guide, systemic world-building noir, narrative structure mystery, high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unaccounted geopolitical rule triggers a fatal blank-page showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Hickson writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, crisp printer ink, sweeping planetary maps, cold tactical charts, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary creative marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft, alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. On Writing and World Building Volume 2 is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unput-outable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.